Hello, everybody, and welcome to this new book launch. Today, we have the privilege of having the author Ankit Roy with us. So, Ankit, I know you have a very interesting story. You are an environmentalist making an impact to the world in your own right. You install solar panels, you work on electric bikes, you work on variety of other sustainability related issues. And here you are having a book which actually in a different mode is going to teach people the mechanism, the methods, the approach, and the reasons for them to think about sustainability. So why don't we start with you giving an introduction of yourself to our audience, and we can then take it from there.
Thank you, Kapil. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I used to work in a company in Mumbai long years ago, like around 6 years ago. And there I realized that the energy needs of the country is increasing at a very rapid pace, and not everyone is aware of it. So most of us think that energy is a basic necessity. We need it. We just need it. And charging your electric vehicle or even using your laptop as simple as a phone requires a lot of energy. So per day, 4 lakh million units were used by a normal area like Airoli, small suburb of Mumbai. That is when I realized that I should come up with something concrete that would make people realize that global warming, yeah, climate change is a thing that we need to look at. I did the activism, of course. I went out on the field. I worked with Greenpeace. Formed my own company, started doing the good work using biogas, electricity, rooftop solar, and all that stuff. But now I've realized that stories are the medium that can actually make a very good impact with the world. I've also received feedback that some of my stories were good and people liked them, and that is the reason I came up with this particular novel. The inspiration was science fiction, of course, because I'm a big fan of science fiction. I've read all kinds of from Annie McCaffrey to Robert Heinlein. I love them. I love the genre. I love the work that they have done, and that is the reason I came up with this. That's it.
Okay, perfect. And can you tell us a little bit more, just a sneak peek about the book? And then, there is a series of questions that I want to ask you as well.
Right. So the sneak peek, what I thought I should write about the book is that what happens if we do not stop, if we keep on going the way we are? What if nobody realizes the effects of industrial revolution and then the development that is being going on for years? So that is the kind of thing I've tried to imagine. What would be a nuclear holocaust would look like? How would the ozone layer depleted feel to a human who is now living somewhere that is completely flooded by the rising seas? That kind of a scenario I've tried to imagine, an apocalypse kind of a world. So the natural option would be leaving Earth, but where would humans go?
Sure.
This is the place, this is the home that we have. After so long research, even now people are struggling to find a planet that resembles ours. Most of the planets don't even have a basic atmosphere. So it would be really difficult to find a planet that is sustainable, that has this kind of environment. So the sneak peek, I would say, is like this hero. He fights all these global warming, climate change, and all this stuff. He fails. The Earth gets blown up. He goes out of the planet as the race would surely to save itself, and that is where all these adventures happen. It becomes a fantasy world, a new world where aliens exist. People find new stuff. Biodiversity is a big thing that I have focused on. The different kinds of animals and species and plants are possible. So all those possibilities of fruit comes fruitfully into this novel.
Sure. So I guess 15, 20 years back, people would have called this pure 100% sci-fi. But don't you think in the current environment, a lot of people would read it and they would actually be reading it as, history 10 years from now versus sci-fi?
I would say the first part would be something like of a history. I've picked up some elements of the great revolution, American Revolution and the French Revolution, because in future, if we think that India is going to be a superpower, which is very likely, then the European countries and America, how would the relation be? What would happen to communism? The basic communism, I've imagined a country that has all the communist countries coming together, forming a large landmass from Russia to China, one single country. That is the kind of scenario I've imagined. There is a lot of war in the book because history is littered with wars. We all know that. I mean, First World War and Second World War were not enough. There are Gulf Wars, Six-Day War, every kind of wars happen.
Sure.
So history would always have some or other kind of a war. And that is how I've done justice to the book.
Sure.
The first part is very much something that can happen in the future. The second part is pure fantasy, book 2, where they land on a different planet that is completely, I would say, would be hard to connect, but a hardcore sci-fi reader would be very happy to read that. What I've focused on in the book is more on the technological advances required. I mean, you will need a rocket that would take such a huge payload into space.
Sure.
Evacuating a planet needs a huge payload.
Absolutely.
Currently, we can only put small satellites into space. So that kind of technology.
Send Jeff Bezos with 6 other people to space.
So 6 and 7 people. We are talking about evacuating a planet here. Sure. So the payload would be huge. The technological advances would be different. So I've focused on those things. I've tried to explain how the technology would be. Going through wormhole, crossing huge distances, like in light years. So that kind of things I've tried to focus, and that is the middle of the journey. That is the journey that these heroes take. And at the end of it, they try to put forward what are the difficulties of landing on a different planet. I mean, from far away, you think that the planet can be hospitable. It might be hospitable, but you never know. It can be a mound of dust. You can just sink into the mound of dust and gases. Yep. There would be no end to it. Anything can happen.
Absolutely.
That uncertainty I've tried to capture in the book.
Fantastic. That sounds really exciting. Now, your protagonist in the novel is Madhav,
yes.
who is an environmentalist and an advocate against global warming. Is it really a fictional protagonist character, or is it you being portrayed in the novel yourself?
I'll be honest. Madhav is someone I want to be. It's like this great superhero. Everyone has something in the deep desire inside them. Madhav is that desire that I want to be. I want to be that guy who actually impacts a lot of people, changes things, does it for the planet. Whatever the reality is, I don't know if I'm doing that impact or not. But yes, Madhav wants to do that. He does that in the book. That's my world. I made him a hero. And that is what I want to be. That's how I've created Madhav.
Okay. And they always say authors will have some similarity with the protagonist of the novel, and I guess that's true here as well. Now, you are calling your novel as the War of Canneti.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little more about Canneti and its genesis?
See, the reason why I chose this name are twofold. First of all, I was very young when I came across this computer game called Freedom's Landing. Okay. It was based on a novel by Annie McCaffrey, who is currently one of my favorite sci-fi authors. I loved that game. I was so engaged. I completed that. It was my 12th board exam. No, I think it was my 8th class. I was in my 8th or 9th class. I was so engaged. I put all my time in playing that game.
Sure.
It had layers of meaning, like different kind of species, different worlds. I was engrossed. After all this happened, after years, maybe after first or second year college, I came across this book by Annie McCaffrey in one of the bookshops. It was just lying around there, and I bought it for 10 rupees. Okay. I went home, I read it. I found out on eBay that it is a very highly priced book in the international market and very rare in need. It was a very old book. I recognized that this is what the game was based on. And that is why the species in that book are named as Canneti.
Canneti, okay.
This is just a juggling of name. I've used that name, but I couldn't name them directly the same, so I changed it to Canneti.
Okay, perfect. And your interest in sustainable energy solutions, how did you get into this? I mean, I can understand climate change, yes. Global warming is a problem for everyone. So in some ways, everybody is part of this. But how did you get into it? Because it looks like you've been, looking at sustainability for a much longer duration than somebody like me who has recognized the problem very recently.
I'm an electrical engineer by profession. I did my MTech from National Institute, Bhopal.
Okay.
From there, I worked in the power distribution field, mainly in the research area, where I was supposed to find out what are the losses in transmitting power from one end to other. Now think of it from my perspective. I know how much energy is required for a city to run. I can also see the amount of power that is being lost in transmitting it.
Sure.
So I can see the wastage. I can see not only the wastage, I can see the demand that is growing every day.
Sure.
I also know the fact that earlier for 1 rupees of coal, you could get almost 10 rupees of energy.
Sure.
Today, for digging that coal, you have to go deep. So you invest 10 rupees of your money and you get 1 rupees of coal.
Sure.
The reason why gas prices are increasing.
Sure.
How long can someone sustain it? The economy, the industrial revolution in 1705, because of the steam engine, that economy was powered by this cheap fuel.
Mm-hmm.
Now the fuel is not cheap. It's the economy will automatically collapse, because if you put in 1 rupees, you don't get 10 rupees worth of energy. Mm-hmm. But for solar energy, if you talk about a solar panel during the daytime, if you put 1 rupees of 1 rupees of production money, you get almost 12 to 13 rupees of energy. That is the parity between coal-based power and solar power.
Sure.
It has now come to that level. So if we can find an intermediate technology that can sustain energy during night, other than the photovoltaic effect that we use during the day, mm-hmm. a big change can come. And there are devices, there are fuel cells in the market. NASA, you think about it, 1960, they landed on the moon. Come on, man. They have the technology. We humans have the technology. We have the guts. We have the knowledge. It's just some crony capitalists that don't want this to happen. I've put this issue in my book also. I've named it as a conspiracy that led to a great war. Unless and until people realize that it needs to be done, it won't change. And that is the kind of thing I want to portray. And I want to give this message to everyone. It's not about you or me understanding sustainability. It is something that the generations to come will understand. We are reaping the benefits of industrial revolution. Our children will actually be the bearers of the loss of industrial revolution.
Sure, I hear you. Now, you talked about war. You talked about apocalypse of sorts. You talked about need to look for a new planet, need to look for a new civilization and a new place, and all of that. But within this, you have very carefully weaved a romantic story as well. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I won't say it's a romantic story. It's something like what most Indians do. I'm a little bit of orthodox. So I haven't in my life gone forward and talked to a girl just because I wanted a girlfriend or something. That has never happened with me. The hero is that kind of a person, because I've modeled him on my thoughts. So there is a hint of a relationship. There is a hint of love, but that's it. I've not made it a romantic thing, because I don't think in our lives it ever happens. I think love happens because it has to happen. I mean, if we have enough time, we would surely fall in love. But we don't have time. We have to save the world. That is the kind of responsibility we have. I don't think we would have time to fall in love.
Sure. So you are saying love is the highest level of Maslow's hierarchy. We don't get to actualization. How will we get to love?
Perfectly put.
Okay, I hear you. I'm not sure if I fully agree with that, but I definitely hear what you are trying to say.
A lot of people don't agree. Even my wife doesn't agree with the same line of thought. She thinks love can happen anytime, but not me.
So my theory is love itself is functional. So it's probably more in alignment with what you are saying, but with a slight twist to it. But anyway, we can have a discussion about my definition and your definition of love in a completely different perspective, in a different location altogether. Let's get back to your book and your writings. Can you talk a little bit more about your writing experiences?
I started writing pretty early when I was in 9th or 10th standard. I used to write for my school magazines. for college magazines. I also used to write my diaries. I have some beautiful pieces in my diaries that I'm sure I've used some pieces here. One of them I still remember, and I can connect is once I was just lying out in my roof, and this meteor shower happened. I didn't know about it, but it just happened, and I witnessed it. I put it down in my diary. I still have that date, time, and the beautiful description that I've written. So I always had my friends and family also told me that I write good. I never took it seriously because electrical technology is something that I really like. Physics and these are the things that I was connected to. But later in life, I would say around 10 years ago, I decided I should pen down some stuff and put it out to the world. And if people really like my writing, then probably one day I will come out with a novel.
Sure, sure.
So that is what happened.
Perfect. Now, why did you choose self-publishing?
I thought it gives me I think it gives me the freedom to move forward quickly. I mean, I don't need to send it to someone and get the approval, get it edited. I can do it myself.
Okay.
I write, I edit, I cover design the covers, I upload, I move forward with the next idea. So that freedom and that speed is what I like. That is the reason
I completely agree. In fact, I published my first book, a few months back. It was titled as India Vision, New Age Equality.
New Age, okay.
So it's my perspective of equality and India and everything. Anyway, while I was writing it, I was also clear. I can't go into a queue where somebody is going to take 9 months to review my, my manuscript, then give me suggestions, then move forward from that. But interestingly for me, I had a very dear friend who is a publisher who, while he did get my book read, while he did give some feedback, but I could have arm twisted him into publishing whatever I wrote. So I agree with you that I think a lot of times self-publishing provides you that kind of freedom to choose what you want to get written. In a lot of cases, while I was writing, I write in a very fluid style. Okay, I'm not a writer. I mean, I was penning down my thoughts. So I write in a fluid style. A lot of places the editor would come and say, oh, this probably need to be said differently. There is a grammatical something that need to be, or structuring something that need to be looked at. And my response in most cases would be, but this is how I would speak it. So, let the reader get the nuances of it by themselves versus we making it grammatically, structurally correct. So I do agree that having that kind of ability is something good. And also a lot of new authors these days, a lot of people that have published 1, 2 or 3 books actually come up and share with us some horror stories of how they were not treated well by some of the larger publishers. Who tend to go more with more renowned and next level authors where they have minimal amount of risk while they are getting it published.
See, that's the point. I mean, money drives the market. So if I can get my book noticed, I can certainly go with a vanity publisher or maybe a better publisher.
Sure.
But initially, self-publishing is the best way to go forward.
Sure. I also want to ask you one question, your thought on sustainability. We recently went through COP26. We have seen the change over the last 5 years from Paris Climate Accord to, somebody pulling out of it, somebody getting back into it, climate summits happening, people talking about global warming, key activists of all ages, specifically from the youth population coming up. We've seen all of that. One of the thoughts that I have had where I want to get your perspective is the problem for us as humanity when we talk about sustainability is not really, climate change and looking at how will we reduce the resources that we use, but it is also in a big way the amount of population that we have. Which do you think is bigger? Do we need to find more alternate sources? And I'm not suggesting one is the answer, but I'm saying which is the bigger leg for you? Need for finding new technologies or need for regulating our population as well?
I'll give a small preface. India has been very unlucky with respect to technology. We have missed the revolution bus when the world was actually moving towards freedom and liberty in the 1700s. We were fighting amongst Aurangzeb and other Marathas. So we missed that bus. We missed the industrial revolution bus. Sure. We missed it entirely. We didn't have a steam engine unless the British came on our shores and started laying the iron rails. Mm-hmm. So these were 2 important buses that we missed we have not developed, and that is the reason we have so much poverty. The reason for poverty is not the politicians, or I would say British invasion or anything. It is we ourselves are responsible for this. And to move forward and to have that thing gone, we need development. We cannot deny it. We need it. Overpopulation is one thing, but then China is also overpopulated. They have more population than us, but they are developed. So we cannot blame it on anyone. The thing is that we need to work. Yes, climate change is needed, but it is needed in a very what do you say, uniform manner. We need it in a very uniform manner. If Europe develops, and they have already developed, they should stop their development. We should be developing right now. It should be Asia, it should be India, it should be Africa, where people are starving for food that must be developed, and then we should stop it. A basic necessity must be created. So overpopulation is not the problem. It is more like these agitations, they should have a leader, they should have a combined effort. Then it would be something which will deliver a product. When Greta Thunberg chastises the European government, she forgets to mention that Africa is still underdeveloped. There are people who have never eaten a loaf of bread there. I was just looking at some United Nations funding programs. See the conditions of Ethiopia and Sudan. So inequality in discussing things like, okay, America has developed, but you should stop development, that is not going to work. Paris Accords, that is the reason why these accords don't work. You cannot force India to not develop. You cannot do that. People don't have space to live here.
Sure. So in a lot of ways, what is required is a global equality before we talk about global changes.
If there is to be globalization has changed the economy. We have KFCs everywhere, but we don't have sustainable energy products everywhere. The reason is globalization वही काम करता है जहाँ पे पैसा बनता है. How to say that in English? I don't know. That was the best word.
I completely understand, and in fact, I have been talking about it for a long time. Interestingly, last year when Indian government banned a bunch of different Chinese applications, I was called on Republic TV in the Arnab Goswami show to talk about the Chinese banning. And since then, I have been saying, please don't talk about Chinese banning. Please give me alternate, financially viable solutions. I will not use an Indian solution because I believe in nationalism, and not using an Indian solution does not make me an anti-nationalist. It has to make financial sense first for me to then be interested and take it forward. So I hear you. I understand where you are coming from, and I'm sure our audience is going to love what you have written. We work with a lot of different Frontlist, and more than Frontlist, as a digital agency that I run, we work with a variety of different organizations, people and everything who are environmental crusaders. And it seems like I have found a new paradigm, a new vision of environmental crusaders in somebody like you, who is using sci-fi and who is using a sci-fi novel as a mechanism to talk about sustainability, as a mechanism to impart that knowledge and impart that requirement, and what is going on right now, where do we need to intervene. I'm sure people will have a fun time reading it, and I'm sure that they will be more sensitized towards sustainability and toward environmental problems while going through this. Ankit, any parting thoughts from your side that you would want our audiences to remember or to look at as they are reading what you have written?
I have had an inspiration while writing the book. At the end of the chapters, I decided that there should be an explanation to what is happening. The book is very haphazard. It just keeps happening, adventure after adventure. It moves forward. So there is a part where this protagonist meets God, and God gives him a short of a lesson, just one page. It was actually inspired by the Gita. But that is my favorite part, and there is a message in that particular thing. Listen to your heart. So how do we listen to your heart? I think if something feels like a chore and doesn't make you happy, you should stop doing it immediately. I feel good when I talk about environment. You might have noticed that I just feel excited when I start talking about all this stuff. That makes me feel good, and that is why I do it. You should too. Even the audience should do what they feel good, because that is what the world needs. If you know what it is, it's like humans are the most developed species because they have a constant layer of enlightenment. I know what Newton did because written records are present.
Sure.
No other animal can do that.
Sure.
And that is why you should listen to your heart's calling, do that work, put that out into the world, and move forward, whatever happens.
Fantastic. So the ability to document is the biggest growth or the biggest achievement humanity.
That is the reason I came up with the book, and that is the message I want to convey.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, that's a great thought, Ankit. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Your book, The War of Canneti, I'm sure it will do wonders. I would definitely be interested in being a reader. Thank you so much for coming on Frontlist. Thank you so much for giving us this interview and sharing your thoughts. And best of luck to you as the book comes out.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
It was a pleasure talking to you as well.